The long-awaited release of the so-called Epstein Files by the U.S. Department of Justice was billed as a landmark moment of transparency. Instead, it has reinforced a growing public suspicion that powerful institutions remain more committed to protecting political elites than to fully confronting one of the most disturbing criminal networks in modern American history. While the document dump is vast, millions of pages, videos, and images, the manner, timing, and scope of the release point less toward accountability than toward a carefully managed containment strategy, one that appears particularly calibrated to shield Donald Trump from political and reputational fallout.
Today we are producing more than 3 million pages, including more than 2,000 videos and 180,000 images.
On its face, the announcement by Trump's former personal lawyer and now Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche sounded historic. More than 3 million pages of material spanning over 2 decades of investigations into Jeffrey Epstein were released in what Blanche described as compliance with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Yet the numbers themselves tell a more troubling story. The department acknowledged identifying over 6 million potentially responsive records, meaning that roughly half of the material remains withheld or heavily redacted. This gap alone undermines claims of full compliance and raises the central question, now dominating public debate. If the government truly has nothing to hide, why is so much still hidden?
The department's collection effort resulted in more than 6 million pages being identified as potentially responsive, including department and FBI emails, interview summaries, images, videos, and various other materials collected and generated during the various investigations and prosecutions that the Act covered. We erred on the side of over-collection of materials from various sources to best ensure maximum transparency and compliance, which necessarily means that the number of responsive pages is significantly smaller than the total number of pages initially collected. That's why I mentioned a moment ago, we're releasing more than 3 million pages today and not the 6 million pages that we collected.
The optics of the release did little to inspire confidence. Blanche's press conference was defensive, at times combative, and marked by repeated insistence that the department was not acting to protect Trump. That insistence, however, only amplified the suspicion it sought to dispel. Blanche explicitly rejected what he called a mantra that the Justice Department exists to protect Donald Trump, declaring, "That was never the case. We are always concerned about the victims." Yet this reassurance sits uneasily alongside months of delay, shifting deadlines, and a sudden insistence that the latest release may be the final one.
We did not protect President Trump. We didn't protect or not protect anybody. I mean, I think that there's a hunger or a thirst for information that I do not think will be satisfied by the review of these documents. And there's nothing I can do about that. But President Trump, of all the people in Washington, D.C. and around this country that have said for years the same consistent message about Jeffrey Epstein is President Trump. And so there's not been a change of course or anything, and certainly his direction to the American people and his direction to the Department of Justice was to be as transparent, release the files, be as transparent as we can, and that's exactly what we did.
The political context matters. Trump campaigned in 2024 on a promise to release the Epstein files, presenting himself as a disruptor willing to expose elite corruption. Once in office, however, his posture shifted dramatically. He downplayed the importance of the files, criticized members of his own party who demanded their release, and dismissed the controversy as a partisan fabrication. Transparency, it seemed, was a liability rather than a priority. Under bipartisan pressure, Trump eventually signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act, but even then framed the issue as a Democrat hoax, along with climate change and the Russiagate scandal. The subsequent implementation of the law has followed a familiar pattern: formal compliance paired with substantive obstruction. Documents were released late, in stages, and with extensive redactions justified by a broad interpretation of legal privilege. The department has admitted to withholding approximately 200,000 pages outright, while redacting countless others for reasons that critics argue go beyond what the law permits. What has emerged from the released material only sharpens these concerns. The files reveal extensive social, financial, and political networks surrounding Epstein, implicating figures across business, politics, and international society. Emails show exchanges between Epstein and Elon Musk, references to a planned visit to Epstein's island by Howard Lutnick, now Trump's Commerce Secretary, and evidence that prominent British figures, including Peter Mandelson and the former Prince Andrew, maintained contact with Epstein long after his criminality was public knowledge. These revelations underscore the central truth of the Epstein scandal. His power derived not from secrecy alone, but from proximity to influential people who faced few consequences for associating with him. Trump's name appears repeatedly throughout the broader Epstein record, a fact long established by prior reporting. The Justice Department has been careful to emphasize that none of the released communications prove criminal conduct by Trump. Blanche reiterated that point, stating that Epstein himself never accused Trump of wrongdoing. But this framing sets an artificially low bar. The question is not only whether Trump committed a crime, but whether the machinery of the state has been deployed to minimize scrutiny of his past associations and to manage political risk. One document in particular illustrates this tension, a 2020 email containing uncorroborated tips alleging Trump's involvement with Epstein victims, submitted to the FBI shortly before the presidential election. The Justice Department quickly labeled these claims unfounded and false, warning that the release may include fabricated material because it encompasses everything submitted by the public. Yet the document was briefly inaccessible after being posted and remains heavily redacted, making independent verification impossible. The department's demand that the public simply trust us echoes a pattern that has eroded confidence for years. Lawmakers and legal experts have been blunt in their assessments. Congressman Ro Khanna, a co-author of the Transparency Act, has questioned why key materials such as FBI 302 victim interviews, draft indictments from the 2007 Florida case, and vast quantities of data seized from Epstein's computers remains unreleased. These critiques converge on a single concern, that the Justice Department under Trump has prioritized institutional and political self-protection over radical transparency. Survivors' advocates argue that every delayed or withheld document reinforces the perception that justice is negotiable when the powerful are involved.
There's this built-in assumption that somehow there's this hidden tranche of information of men that we know about that we're covering up or that we're choosing not to prosecute. That is not the case. I don't know whether there are men out there that abuse these women. If we learn about information and evidence that allows us to prosecute them, you better believe we will. But I don't think that the public or you all are going to uncover men within the Epstein files that abuse women, unfortunately.
In the end, the Epstein Files release may be remembered less for what it revealed than for what it withheld. The sheer scale of the remaining redactions, combined with the regime's defensive posture and Trump's shifting rhetoric, suggests an ongoing internal effort to control the narrative rather than fully confront it. Whether or not future litigation forces additional disclosures, the damage to public trust is already profound. Transparency delayed, partial, and conditional is not transparency at all. It is a strategy. And in this case, it appears to be a strategy designed to protect the most powerful name in the room. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sundays on The Weekend Show with MeidasTouch.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.